So, hello. Would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Hi, Ali. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Dr. Audrey Tang. My background is in psychology, and my PhD was in the psychology of frontline personnel and why they burnt out. And one of my key findings there was actually it's not the demands of the job, it is the extra emotional expectations that are placed on them, which are causing them the extra pressure, the extra stress. So, for example, as a teacher, it's not just a case of learning your lesson. It is about doing it with a smile, doing it after a child has thrown a chair across the room, doing it without showing that you're upset. And the problem was actually that the management often didn't recognise that this is the issue and started thinking, it must be the other demands of the job. Let's do something about that. And of course, teachers go into those jobs, nurses go into those jobs knowing what those demands are. They don't go in necessarily knowing that they have to put on a certain front and they're expected to keep that front there the whole time.
So how would you say that your approach helps the people that you work with?
Well, one of the key things that I do is I look at thriving. So I was trained as a coach in the NHS, and my work, my training is all focused on moving you from okay to flourishing. Martin Seligman, who was the founder of the American Psychological Association, he always said psychology was half-baked. And I came to him as a psychology student, learning about him when he was talking about depression. And one of the quotes that he said really resonates with me. He said, of his epiphany, I used to think that I could take sadness and anger and frustration away from a patient and I would get a happy patient. I didn't. I got an empty one. And that is because the skills of thriving are different to the skills of minimizing sadness. And so with psychology, it has been focused on minimizing sadness. It's been focused on you're here, you're not great, so we're going to move you to being okay. And that's wonderful. We need people to do that. But my work kind of goes, okay, so you're here now. You're on this bit of the continuum. Now what? It doesn't stop there. It is possible to move towards thriving. So my focus is on that side, and I create sessions, I deliver training, I do talks, I write books, focused on getting people from okay to flourishing.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. So what would you say were misconceptions around mental health and well-being?
Well, the first thing is actually just using the term mental health as the negative. Mental health is something we all need. It's the mental health issues. It's the negative aspects of mental wellness or a lack of mental health that is the actual problem. So that's one thing, but that's just terminology. What I would say is I also have a problem with seeing mental health as something you have or you haven't. And I know in our conversations off screen, you've talked about being a mental health first aider, and that continuum is something that they teach within that course. It is about how mental health, mental well-being can fluctuate. So I like to look at it as mental fitness. And so my sessions are there to build up mental and emotional fitness. It's not about saying, well, this is it. It's actually about seeing your mental and emotional well-being in the same way as you see your physical well-being. If you are training for a marathon, for example, you will work out, you will run, you will do the actual physical work. Why do we think that we can go and manage all of the roller coaster of not only the day, but the life that we are living on no training whatsoever? So I work with practical exercises to build up your mental and emotional fitness.
That sounds absolutely amazing. The way you put it with the physical fitness, as you say, people do training for that all the time.
Yeah.
But yet people don't tend to see mental well-being in the same way. So how would you say you cater for individual needs within what you do?
There's a short answer and there's a long answer. A lot of the tools that I teach are for individuals to use. But one of the biggest things that I do, especially in organisations, is remind the individual it's not necessarily their issue only to solve. When we talk about mental health, mental well-being, mental fitness, there's often a lot of systemic and environmental issues that are playing on you. So the example I like to give is taking a health and safety approach to mental wellness rather than what we do at the moment, which is, oh, you're burnt out. Go and take a workshop on it. Go and get yourself some help. You go deal with it. Because it's clearly you that hasn't got the resilience, you that hasn't got the tools to be able to manage. But taking a health and safety approach, and this is something that Karen Scholes has been working on recently, is if you walk into the office and you fall down a hole, what happens? They fix the hole. They don't say to you, you know what, next time we're going to give you lessons in how to get out of the hole, or we're going to give you lessons to walk around the hole. No, they fix the hole. So why is it if you are on the floor with burnout, we'll give you lessons to do it. We'll teach you how to get out of burnout. No, fix the system. Fix what's causing the problem in the first place. And so taking that health and safety, that practical approach, is really helpful to the individuals because it's about systemic change rather than just going, it's up to you to make the changes.
That's really interesting because I know when I became a mental health first aider, that was a similar thing. They said, that's great that we have mental health first aiders, but are we asking why and what in the system we need to change? So it's exactly that. That's wonderful. You mentioned that point. What would you say about mental health and well-being nowadays? Have you noticed a change over the past few years?
We're definitely talking about it a lot more, which is great because the stigma that used to be there is still there in many cultures, sadly, unfortunately, but it is getting better. People understand that it's not necessarily how they're behaving is not necessarily their fault. There's something wrong with them. There are other things at play, and I think that's really helpful. However, something like social media is a little bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to mental well-being, because on the one hand, you can get helpful information, you can get useful tips and tools, you can get resources online, but you can also get an awful lot of misinformation. And unfortunately, because certain hashtags, certain ideas or certain things people say can be very, very popular, there is no regulation of the information that is coming in. So on the one hand, we're talking about mental well-being a lot more, great. On the other, there's no regulation on who's talking about it.
That's very interesting. So if we had a room full of people, so how many of those do you think would benefit from your services?
Oh, that's a good question. And I would say with me in particular, I have a very practical style. And if it doesn't suit you, you're not going to benefit from that. And that's okay. But I would actually say that with every practitioner. One of the first things they teach you when you're, certainly in my coaching training, is it's about building a rapport with people. And if my style, my way of working, I'm quite a challenging coach rather than a nurturing coach, for example, so I bring the same into my training. If that suits you and that's what you need, then chances are you will benefit because it's going to work. But if that is scary, and that's okay, if that's just not you, that is also okay. Find the person that suits you. It's never a one size fits all. So what I always say in my training is I will give you a whole compendium of practical tools to work with. However, treat it as a pick and mix. If you like it, have it, like a buffet. If you don't like it, that's okay. We're all adults. You do not need to say yes to absolutely everything. But in general, I would also say that people will benefit because of the practicality. So one example I just give you here is we talk about energy vampires an awful lot. People who drain the energy out of you. You feel great, and then suddenly you've spoken to them. You just, oh no. And we have these people in our lives. A lot of psychologists, is that broad brush, get rid of them. Just remove them. How? We live in the UK. We're very stiff upper lip. We hate offending people. So it's not going to work. So one exercise that I give people is to think about cups of tea. I like cups of tea because they take time to boil. They take time to brew. They take time to drink because it's hot. And right now, with the cost of living, they take a lot of energy. So you need to think about writing in those cups who you want to have a cup of tea with. And they might be your mum or your sibling, or it might be your partner or a friend, and write down who they are. Then identify 3 key values about them. So what's really important. So for example, let's pop you in there, Ali. From our meeting, you're friendly, you're enthusiastic and energizing, and you have a whole lot of resilience. I admire that. I like being in that energy. So those are the qualities you will put in there. And if you recognize the qualities you like in those particular people, then tell them, because psychological trick here, it's conditioning. If you tell them, they'll do it more. But also, why do we have to be drunk before we tell somebody, oh, you're so brilliant? Just tell them. It makes them feel better. Secondly, behave in those ways yourself, because how can you attract what you like into your life if you're not behaving in those ways? But thirdly, and this is the most important, actively choose to spend time with these people. And this works professionally as well. So it might be, Ali says to me, great, could you do another interview? Yes, I will put Ali into my diary. And then to other people, and this is the same to those energy vampires who you don't want to spend time with, if I'm actively spending time with Ali, I can legitimately say to somebody else, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. So that is how you can legitimately remove those toxic people from your life, or not spend so much time with them, or at least put a boundary on your time, while still being polite and being you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because there's some people that you can't avoid if they're with your day-to-day life or you're with work and that. But outside that, or as much as possible, what makes you you is the people around you. And if you surround yourself with negative people, that just pulls you down. But I love the cup of tea analogy. That's really interesting. I've never heard that before.
It's a fun one. And it always just used to be the time it takes to boil, but then with the cost of living, when I look at switching the kettle on and my smart meter jumps up, you kind of go, yeah, there's an additional cost there as well.
Yeah. And what I also love is your honesty with saying, actually, it's horses for courses, and for some people, you might not be the right fit. I think that's really, really important for people to know.
Yeah, it's not only for you to know as the therapist, the counsellor, the coach, whoever you are offering your services to help, but it's important for people to know they have choice. I always say to people with things like medical issues, you can have a second opinion. You can ask your GP to refer you to another GP. You don't have to just stick with that one person if you're not getting the answers. I'm not saying the answers are going to change, but the way in which someone approaches you, the way in which you're spoken with, and so on, that might be the difference between healing or not.
I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and I think if I was having a cup of tea, I would definitely add you in the mix with there. It's been wonderful to get to know you. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, it's Anastasia, and welcome. Hi, Jaziah.
Hello.
Nice to have you back again to episode 9. So I believe that you wanted to talk today about growing in environments.
Yeah.
Can you share your experience of growing up in different environments and how they shaped you worldwide?
So from a young age, I can say that I didn't have the best household growing up, but I can say, like, with problems there come solutions. So when it comes to being raised, obviously you have your fair share of problems. You have certain ways of behaving towards people, and it comes across as like, you're a horrible person, you're this, you're that, you're that. But really and truly, just that person hasn't been raised right. So the deck of cards they've been handed in life hasn't been a good one. They've been given 2s and 3s and 4s when they should have been given aces, kings, queens and 10s and 9s, but they haven't had the best side of the spectrum. So it could be like lack of parenting, proper parenting. It could be low income, it could be mental health problems, disorders, physical disorders as well. And these all come into play when it comes to the person's behavior as well, around others, how they act towards themselves as well.
Yeah, because I feel like mental health, it doesn't just come from your experiences in life. It comes from actually growing up and the environment you grew up in as well, which can have an impact in your life. And it's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what challenges did you face while adapting to new environments? And like, what are your ways and how you overcame them?
They say that some people, well, it's actually, I think this is in my Bible, that some people can only be saved through great suffering. And for me, if you don't listen, you will feel. And for my part, I had to feel things, because being told off by parents, by friends, whatnot, isn't enough. So I have to go through negative experiences in order to learn certain things. Now I'm at a point in life where I don't have to necessarily go through negative things in order to learn. I can see from other people's examples, or I can just learn it from myself. When growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends because I was quite badly behaved towards them. That changed in college. I was quiet, but I also wasn't really liked anyways. So I just kept my head down. When it came to GCSEs, I kept my head focused. I still prioritized some friendships, but I still focused, because at the end of the day, there are some things I don't want in life.
So I know you mentioned school and college. How do you feel school and college and local communities can support individuals suffering from mental health? Do you feel they do enough?
I feel like it's not talked about enough. It's not a topic that is really discussed. Only if you go to maybe inclusion rooms, or when it's break time and you normally go to rooms that aren't really explored in the school, with your assistant teachers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like schools and communities don't really help much. I mean, employers have their own services like NHS to support with mental health, but I feel like it's different for schools and colleges that support that.
I think
What do you think?
They if you don't tell someone about something that they have, they're not going to know what it is and how to utilize it in the best way. Without telling someone about their mental health, about how they should behave, how it works, it's essentially not acknowledging that people have a brain that they can use in some sort of way. Because if I knew how to use my brain, and if I actually knew how to regulate my emotions, be taught things, I could say that I would have probably done a bit better in school. I've done really well in academically, I passed most of my GCSEs, but socially and psychologically, it was horrible. It was a nightmare, and some people still haven't forgiven me for what I did. Yeah.
So, in terms of the impact of socio-economic environment, like you said, what impacts it for children and adults to go through that?
It's
is it low income families?
It's multiple things.
That can impact low impact families, that can impact it.
It's lack of support networks, because you need both parents and family and schools to help raise a child as well. You can have multiple children at once, but you need a strong foundation. Let's say you have a seedling, right, and it's still growing. If you now have it in the wind, it's just gonna get blown away, probably rot a bit, scorched up by the sun, because its foundation isn't strong. It doesn't have family members to fall back on. Their friends aren't really helping them. Well, they might not even have friends, and
So, yeah, so in terms of like educational environment and mental health, students to feel safe and supported at school are 70% less likely to experience significant mental health issues. And from where that comes from is the UK Department of Education. What advice would you give to young people who are struggling to adapt to new or challenging environments? What advice, what tips can you give?
Be around the right people, get to know what kind of people you're around, and if it doesn't sit right with you, you can try and change the environment you're around, or you can find a new batch of people. But I would say stay strong in the environment that you're currently in, and if anything, your example can either reflect off the people around you or reflect onto the people around you, and also considering what type of example you are giving, but also to remember to even sometimes you can question the examples that you are being given. You can stand up if you don't feel like someone's behaving in the right way. If a teacher or assistant is behaving in a weird manner, you can ask, is that right? Is that the right thing to do? And you can follow up with either your parents or your support network as well, if what you saw or heard was normal. Sometimes when I'm outside in the world, I hear things and I can question it, or I ask, did you do this? Did you do that? And like, if someone's saying, oh, I got into a fight on the phone to someone, I could probably intervene and be like, are you okay? Did you do this? Did you report it? Helping people to stand up to problems that they face.
So thank you, Jaziah. And is there anything else that you would like to share? Do you have like a social media channel?
I have TikTok.
So if you can follow Jaziah on TikTok,
It will be
hear his content.
linked below.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you for the next episodes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ali Duggan. I'm a trained mental health first aider. I'm a coach and I'm also a performer. And I'm here today to share some of my tips on dealing with anxiety.
Thank you, Ali, for joining us. Welcome back again. So, yeah, in terms of anxiety, I believe it's something that quite a lot of people suffer from, isn't it?
It is, and I think one of the things about anxiety is if people don't talk about it, then they're not normalising it.
Yes.
And then I should share what happened for me. So basically what happened for me was it stopped me doing a lot of things, and because there was a lot of shame around it, so I stopped doing things, but I didn't talk about it. And I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me who had these fears and felt like that. But then when I started talking about it, I realised others do too. So it's one of these things, and it's one of the reasons I'm passionate about doing things like this, is sharing more about these things to normalise it, to say, well, everybody goes through anxious periods of their life, or, things that they find difficult and challenging.
Yes. And what are your coping mechanisms, and which ones do you feel are most effective? I mean, do you believe in taking the pill?
I would say for me, it's whatever's right for the individual. Now, there have been times in my life where I have had medication to support me, because sometimes in life there might be a lot of things, they all happen at the same time, and it's okay to ask for help. And that help could be in the form of medication, but also when you start feeling better, working on those things where you can start helping yourself as well, and tips and tools. So alongside medication, some people, they might be on medication for a long time, and that's fine. If that's what works for them, that's fine. Other people might find they're on medication for a little bit, but then they develop their own coping mechanisms. So for me, what I found with anxiety was, well, first of all, what I didn't realise was when you're anxious about something, the anxiety is the same physiological reaction as excitement. So the things that I was most anxious about was actually things that I was also excited about. So for me, it'd be around performing and things like that. But the anxiety stopped me from doing things because in my head was thinking of all these scenarios. I can't do this because I'm not confident enough to do this. They're so much better than me than this. But what I found with me is taking one step at a time, just testing your limits, but just a little bit.
Yeah. And anxiety is a form of fear, isn't it?
Yeah. And for me, what I didn't realise was the more you don't do something that scares you. So for me, actually, if you'd known me 6 years ago, you wouldn't have got me here talking openly about this today. You wouldn't have got me in front of a camera because I was so fearful of showing that side of me that was anxious. But when you do things one step at a time, then those thoughts in your head that say, I can't do this, when you make those steps and you make those little steps and those little achievements, you think, if I can do this, maybe I can do that. But when you stop doing things, my life almost ground to a halt where I was too fearful to do anything because that fear had just built up in my head and there was no other story to say something different. It was just a story in my head, but I didn't have a real life story to counteract, to say, oh, actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought. It wasn't as scary as I thought. Once I started taking those small steps, I thought, actually, this is okay. Sometimes I use breathing techniques.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, breathing techniques.
Changing your mindset is the main thing.
Yeah, but for me, it's, so the breathing techniques, sometimes before you're doing something that's a bit scary, for me, what I do is sometimes I put my hand around my heart like that and just concentrate on the breathing in and the breathing out. And then that helps those thoughts also to settle. Sometimes I refer to it a bit like a snow globe. When you have all those thoughts going round in your head, and you're rushing around doing one thing and the other, just allowing yourself to breathe, allowing yourself to settle, allowing yourself a bit of space to let those anxieties come up, but then it's kind of like letting them come up, but then melt away. Because if you ignore them, it's a bit like a little kid. If you try and ignore them, they'll just keep on saying, come back louder and louder. But if you just go, okay, what are you trying to tell me? I know you're trying to keep you safe because that's what anxiety is. They're trying to keep you safe. But say, that's okay. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, and just concentrate on your breathing. For me, those have been hugely helpful tips that I've found that have helped me move forwards.
And what do you think about therapy? Do you think that helps as well?
Yes, there's different forms of therapy. So in the past, I've had cognitive behavioural therapy, which helped to a certain degree. And I've also had a treatment called EMDR, which is dealing with trauma, because some of my anxiety fed off previous trauma that I've had. So I think, again, like medication, that if you have medication and you have a therapist, then they can both help you. But ideally, what you want to be doing is building up some of your own tools and tips.
Yes.
So when you're feeling well, you think, okay, what helps me when I'm well? For example, if you know when you're well, I like to go out for walks in the park, or I'm doing this, or I'm, phoning my friends or whatever, then building those tools and tips, because they tend to be the things that go when you start feeling anxious or down or anything. But if you can know what helps you feel better, and talking to other people, and then it's not just me that feels like that, other people feel like that too. That was massive for me.
In terms of your support network, how has that played a part in your life in helping you deal with anxiety? What role did they play in your life?
I would say that's quite interesting, because initially my friends, I was outwardly so calm and controlled that I was the one that they came to. They all shared their troubles with me, but I didn't share them with them. But then as I've got older and wiser, I have a fantastic support network of people who are not afraid to reach out for help, not afraid to say they're struggling. For example, if you suffer the loss of somebody or something like that, if you're suffering from grief, then it's only natural it's going to affect your mental health, and it may impact anxiety in other ways as well.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even want to talk about it with anyone.
No. No.
You isolate yourself.
Yeah,
Because you're
isolation is a big thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me personally, I know that even now sometimes I think I'm going into isolation, but I know, the other part of me knows that that's
It's
not
not
a good,
healthy.
it's not healthy and it's not a good place to be. So when I
No.
feel myself going into that, I think, no, I need to reach out, as uncomfortable as that is, because as I say quite often, especially with my role as well, I'm the one who people come to me to ask for help.
Exactly.
That it's okay for anybody to ask for help when they need it.
They shouldn't feel embarrassed.
No. Another thing for me is around self-compassion, because sometimes, as I was saying, I'm always happy to help a mate. If a mate is struggling, I'm always there helping them feel better, doing whatever. What about we give that to ourselves? What about we give ourselves a break and say, okay, you're feeling like this. You know, you've been through a hard time.
The advice you give to other people, we should
Take
apply it
Apply
to
it to
our
ourselves.
lives.
We find it so much easier
Yeah.
to help other people, and sometimes we need to give ourselves that same
Yes.
self-compassion and love.
Yeah, exactly. But it is hard.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, how I am today.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah, how I am today. If you'd seen me 2-3 weeks ago, I was having challenges because I was pushing myself outside my comfort zone. So my old anxieties were coming back in, and for a while I felt like I was slipping backwards. But then I just thought, no, remember what you've done before. I've done things that I didn't think I could do before, and I think, okay, it's feeling tricky right now, but you'll be okay, and do the things that you know. Eat healthily, try and get some sleep, reach out to friends, all those
Yes.
things that you know, because I recognise the signs. I don't always act on them straight away, because even though I know what to do, I
True.
don't always do it straight away. But before I feel myself slipping down too far, I think, no, you know what you need to do, then just go ahead and do it.
Yes. And last question. How has your healthcare providers have an influence in your mental health management? If you do have any healthcare providers.
Well, I have had healthcare providers in the past. What I find now, so I've had postnatal depression in the past, and that was again something that was a big thing where I reached out and admitted it, because in order for me, then I admitted it and then I got the support that I needed. I did have medication for a while. I have seen a cognitive behavioural therapist, which I found really good, because
Yes.
they work on, rather than just a counsellor, they work on your mindset. And now my most recent thing that I've done is seen a specialist, a trauma specialist, about EMDR to process some things that in the past have caused me a lot of anxiety. So what I find now is, if I feel that I need support, then I'm quite happy to reach out, and professionally, if that's what I feel that I need.
Yes. And do you feel that these healthcare providers can do more for us? Like, do you feel there's not much services out there to help people?
I would say,
If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I would say I'm very fortunate, really, because I have a friend who's a coach who deals with therapies. Now, at that time, I was waiting for something under the NHS.
Yes.
And I think, had I waited all that length of time, then my mental health would have deteriorated. Now, I was fortunate in the fact that I could afford to pay for those services myself.
Okay.
So I did pay for some sessions for myself, because otherwise
You'll be waiting a while through the NHS.
I was waiting for a while, and I do think services are really stretched at the moment in all ways.
Yes.
Physical health, mental health, all the services are stretched.
Yeah. And like going back to the support network, it stated that strong social support networks are linked to a better mental health outcome, reducing the risk of depression and anxiety by 50%. Just a statistic.
Well, I would say, for me...
Do you agree?
I would agree that support network has been massive for me, because as I was growing up,
Yes.
I was very much, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm the strong one. And those were times I've had major depression twice in my life. One is as a teenager, which is really, really common. And the other time was postnatal depression. And the anxiety is more thinking about the future. And with friends, with support network, with with hobbies and activities that you enjoy, that all helps to keep you grounded and in the here and now. But yeah, that makes a huge difference.
It is. Who you hang around with, the
Yeah.
relationships you have, really does have an impact.
And what do you do for your own general well-being? Is it you like to go to the gym? Is it you like to do art? What do you like to do? Because if you're doing those on a regular basis, it's kind of a bit like where they say with physical health, apple a day keeps the doctor away. If you're doing those sort of things on a regular basis, you're helping your mental well-being on a day-to-day by doing things that you enjoy, doing things that are good, looking after your diet. So when difficult challenges arise, you might still get anxious, you might feel down, but it won't be as bad as it would be if you didn't have those people and those things around you.
Those bad habits, like eating a lot all the time. And yeah, it's true.
But again, self-compassion. If you're going through a difficult time and during that difficult time, then you go to comfort food because that's your thing. What's better? Is it better to do that and beat yourself up, or is it better to do that and go, okay, maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going through a bad time at the moment? Because otherwise you've beaten yourself up twice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been great having you. And would you like to share anything else before we conclude?
Well, so you can find me on social media. You can find me on Instagram, and I'm Ali C. Duggan Creative. And what I would say with everything that I do, I use what I've learned through mental health and performing, and I blend the two together, and I do storytelling through that. And that's where you'll find me on social media if you would like to connect.
Thank you, and we'll hopefully see you again on the next episode.
Hopefully. I've enjoyed coming again.
So it's time to start today's panel discussion, and joining me are Ali and Jaziah. I'm Dr. Audrey, and this question has come from Jaziah. How do we deal with the current cost of living crisis? So let's throw it over to Ali, and what have you experienced? What have you seen in your work and in the people that you come across with the cost of living?
Yeah, so I work with students. I work with international students in the education sector. I'm working at university, and yeah, it's a real challenge because university studies are very different from when I was there, when it was more about the studies, and now it's a case of you study but you feel like you have to work as well, and everything's more expensive. And what food do you eat? You find people skipping meals or not eating in the best way they can to nourish themselves because they're just juggling so many things. It must be so challenging. They're over here, they're international students I work with, they're over here on their own. Some of them perhaps are maybe too proud to ask for extra help from the parents or something like that. And they're young. They don't have the wisdom and the experience that we have of learning how to manage and being in a different country as well. It's a big thing.
It can be, absolutely, and then that can really affect their ability to study, and that has repercussions as well. I mean, Jaziah, you've got some ideas of what could be done, and actually these are quite big society changing ideas, which I think are very powerful.
So from experience, right, so how it started for me is that when I moved into my house last year, or my new house, there was mint growing in our garden, and it was like, we don't have to go to the store anymore to buy mint tea. So let's try not buy that again. And it got to a point where sometimes your algorithm feeds you with things that you don't normally watch, just to give you new things to watch. Like, you might be interested in this. And obviously these would be videos about growing things at home for me. And I started off with spring onion because I thought, why not? And I saw that it grew really quickly in water. I tried it and it actually grew really quickly. It grew moldy, because it wasn't in soil. So I just planted it in soil, and it's been growing really. It's like this tall now. And I use it in. I'm gonna start using it soon in my meals. But also one thing that we can try to do, especially no matter what class we're in, our financial background, if we don't have a garden, we can buy pots as well. Not condemn the seeds that are in our food or the reproductive abilities. Like if you see potatoes sprouting, what you can do is you can cut it and eat it. You can cut the roots and eat it. But if it's sprouting, you can plant it either in water or in a ground in a pot, and a few months later it will start to grow. It will be ready for harvest, but obviously you still have to take care of it. Like it comes with like a lot of things, like carrots. I've got carrots growing in my room. I've got lettuce growing downstairs. Like I just took the bottom bit and just snapped it from the main one, from the green bit, the leaves, and then I just planted it and it just started growing. So I think once we start off having that self-sufficient mindset of, not trying to just spend pounds and pounds and pounds at the store, because it's gonna hurt our wallets essentially, and it will come back to bite us essentially. So we need to have that mindset that we shouldn't go to the store for certain things if they're willing, if the things we buy are just gonna grow anyways. Like spring onion, it grows in the fridge even when you cut it.
You're true. Yeah. But your point is really key there, because this is about not just looking after the environment, but it is about teaching people different skills. And this is something that I found as a teacher, and you're probably finding this at uni. Sometimes we teach young people skills for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And actually what you're talking about is not only going to be preventative for cost of living issues because you're growing your own food, but the act of gardening, getting out into nature, is preventative for mental health.
I was just thinking exactly the same. How brilliant for mental health, because getting out in nature, doing something, when you're in the moment and you're doing something, then your brain's not thinking of other things, growing things. How amazing would that? I just hearing you talking about it, I thought, wow, why had I never thought about doing that?
And for those who don't really struggle with cost of living, like you also have to think about other people as well. Like not everyone has it like you, so maybe you can have a change of mindset or heart and just be like, I'm not struggling, but the people next door down the road are struggling. You might have a lot of space to grow things, and you could just be like, wow, let me do this, let me do that, because essentially you are helping out your community and as well as you're saying mental health as well, because you're not worried about other things as well. It's so much rewarding too when you eat the fruits of your labor.
It is. It's that empowerment as well. And whilst you're talking, and you're absolutely right, I think Ali and I are at a similar age. One of the things I know our generation likes to say, and we are not necessarily representatives of this, is, yes, but it's not going to affect me. It will only affect my children. And you are right in pointing out we can't just have that attitude. We have to be compassionate for other people, and we have to take a social responsibility. Again, how do we teach our generation that responsibility?
One way to help teach them that is if you actually start by being self-sufficient, you can teach them ways that they can be self-sufficient too, because what if the people that you know aren't self-sufficient? Yeah. And if they gain something from you that you've taught them, and if they take it on board, they're like, okay, I want to do more of this. I
might listen to more things. Mm-hmm. That's.
They'll take your example on board, and they'll want to go to you for more things.
How would a uni respond, do you think, Ali, when it comes to saying, let's add this to the curriculum? Let's add something a little bit like PSHE in schools, you know?
I think it would be fascinating because you've already got my brain working on things. I'm thinking about almost having kind of allotment areas and things like that,
Yes.
where the students, where they're growing things together, they're sharing. Therefore, as well, because if it's fresh vegetables, it's stuff you've grown, it's giving you a sense of worth, all those things. It's a really, really good idea. And you've also made me think as well, I know round where I live, there are allotments around there, and, you know, people do give food away perhaps, but do they give that food away to people they know that don't necessarily need that food, or would that food be better given to other people who need it more?
Connecting with a food bank or connecting with a charity or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
It helps the students have life skills that they wouldn't have, because it's all good knowing how to grow cress in school, but it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. We need to know this. We need to keep doing it in order for us to actually not only enjoy it, but to do it ourselves when we're older.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. And it's something that businesses also need to think about as part of corporate social responsibility. It is about sustainability. And we're not just talking about, sustainability and let's get green or anything like that. We are talking about true sustainability of the environment, of the world that has given so much to us. We need to start giving something back. So let us know in the comments, or let us know on the show if you have other ideas for that true sustainability and empowerment that also boosts your mental health when it comes to the cost of living.